Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, you know that I invite the most amazing speakers, leaders onto my show because I just want them to share their amazing insights, career experience with you. And hopefully they'll inspire you. And I know they will inspire me along the way. And just know we put this podcast out there for C-suite leaders of today, of tomorrow as well, even entrepreneurs, because I want you to navigate your challenges and opportunities with confidence. And this week, it is my pleasure to welcome onto the show Derek Fredrickson, who has over 16 years of experience as Chief Operations Officer at Boldheart and other 6 and 7 figure businesses. And he has witnessed firsthand how transformative a robust operational strategy can be for entrepreneurs who are ready to scale but feel overwhelmed. And as the founder of the COO Solution, he specializes in helping business owners break free from the operational grind and reclaim their time while confidently scaling their business. Derek, it's a pleasure. And thank you so much for dropping in.
Thank you, Deb. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me on your show.
And so, my pleasure. And the reason for my listeners why I brought him on, obviously, is that I talk about being in the manufacturing space, having a background in quality and operations. And also, I have been a fractional chief operations officer for a PR company. And I know the challenge of trying to work with business owners to ultimately get them to peace of mind. But I am so curious about Derek. His personal life and the work that he does, because I want to learn from him. And I also want you to learn how he can help you. So, Derek, I'm going to pass the mic back over to you and share a bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Again, I'm happy to be here. I love sharing and seeing what I can offer to your audience. I'll give just a brief kind of recap of who I am and where I've come from. I actually started out not in entrepreneurship. I started out in corporate on Wall Street back in the day. And then at the same time, my wife actually was growing a very successful business coaching company. And she had a lot of passion and fulfillment in the work that she was doing. And conversely, at the same time, I didn't really feel a lot of passion and fulfillment in what I was doing, working on Wall Street, working in corporate. The money was great, but I didn't really see the long-term potential for having a really meaningful professional path. And so I actually ended up partnering with my wife and working together. And we created boldheart.com, which is a business coaching company. It's been at multiple 7 figures for the last 17 years, a self-managing company, right people, right seats. We had to figure out how to work together as husband and wife, as well as what I would say the kind of CEO and COO at the same time, which could be a whole other episode in and of itself, working with your spouse. But we really aligned ourselves in what are the strengths and zones of genius that she brings, and what are the things that I bring in order to continue to scale and grow that company. And then fast forward, I realized I really enjoyed essentially stepping into that role as what I would call a second in command, that trusted operator for an entrepreneur, for a business owner that allows them, as you said, get out of the day-to-day, focus on the vision, focus on the bigger future, but with the confidence and peace of mind that things are running smoothly, we're doing things more efficiently, more effectively. And so I really enjoyed that. And so I started to offer fractional COO services to just a handful of other clients, and then quickly realized that for me to scale and do that, I needed to get out of my own way because there was only so much of Derek to go around. And so I launched the COO Solution with the same idea of bringing in fractional COOs, what I would call chief operating officers, those that really are that kind of operator, air traffic controller for a business, supporting the visionary, the founder, and working with their teams in terms of just scaling and growing their business. And that's what we've been doing. It's been very exciting to kind of step out of what I would say the COO role, kind of say like taking the COO hat off and putting the CEO hat back on for my own business. So it's been quite the journey.
Oh wow, there's so much in there. But you know what? I'm gonna take you back to say you could say this is a whole nother episode. So then what were the guide rails, the rules to maintain peace and harmony in the personal and business life when you did decide to work with your wife? What are those hats that you both wear, and what are maybe some of the ground rules just to keep things
Oh,
sane
great.
and
Yeah. I
working?
love I love talking about this because there are some people when I say that, there's one camp. The one camp is, oh my gosh, I could never work with my spouse. Like it would be a disaster. And I understand that this is not for everybody, but there are some that maybe have an idea or a goal where they do want to partner together, or perhaps like I was in a career path that wasn't as fulfilling, and the idea of stepping into entrepreneurship. And I also, I firmly believe that in that type of partnership, when it works, it's the equation of 1 + 1 = 3, because you've got that kind of business support and you've got that strategy alignment. And also at the same time, you're kind of personally aligned in your goals and what your big why is and what the objective is longer term. But a few hacks, if I can share them. Number
Yes.
one, in the beginning, I didn't know anything about the business, right? In terms of business coaching and online marketing or Facebook ads. This is back in 2008. So it was a very different landscape to what it is right now. And one of the first things that I did is, I often say, I kind of started out in the mailroom. I kind of just got into the weeds of things and said, so what do we do here? What's an email list? What's a launch? What's a coaching program? Who are your clients? Who are your clients? How do you work with them, et cetera? Just to kind of figure it out. I'm a fact finder. I like information because it gives me the understanding of in the context. So it was helpful for me to just kind of get into the weeds of things. And as a result of that, we also started to work very closely with certain assessments that allow us to understand how we're wired. What are our strengths? What are our zones of genius? An individual like me, as that second command, has a different wiring, skill set, and strengths than somebody who's the visionary, right? Visionary are big picture thinkers. I often say they love to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. They like to start things and not necessarily finish things. And there's nothing wrong with that. They need that sandbox. People like me as a COO, we love to finish things. We're the ones that make things happen. So it was a good match, and understanding how we're wired through those assessments. And then the last hack I'll share is something that we learned over time, because again, it wasn't easy in the beginning, understanding each other's roles, our responsibilities, and also blending personal and professional life. That can get a bit tricky. And so we were very clear that we needed to have even stronger boundaries than most, because we were raising our family at the time. We have 3 children. They were much younger at the time. And I needed, and my wife as well, especially myself, needed to be very aware of which hat I was wearing. And I would always say, am I wearing Derek husband hat, or am I wearing Derek's COO hat? And so if we're at the dinner table and we're having a conversation and we left work on the doorstep, so to speak, even though we were working from home, I would be very conscious of not to bring in a work conversation, because what would happen is it would, one, derail us from the personal, valuable time that we had as a family or as a couple. And then we could get into a rabbit hole because we'd love to strategize, we'd love to talk shop, and we'd love to think things through. But there was like, well, we need to take a break. So we were very, very clear, like which hat we were wearing. And if it started to brink on the conversation that started to smell a little bit like work, or like, nope, we're not going there. We'll put that on the side. We'll maybe talk about that next time. So boundaries, boundaries, boundaries was huge for us.
Very helpful because my husband has always had his own business. I have my business. It was very interesting, but also he was part of a family business, and on the job site, his father who owned it, he would always call him Joe, but they would come home to the dinner table and he'd call him Dad. And so they
Mm,
had very clear boundaries. They would occasionally talk shop, but
yeah.
they made it work. And so, but the funny thing is, I would say I would never work for my husband again. I used to be his bookkeeper in the day. I was, oh my God, he's a son of a bee. But you know what? You just jogged something in my head. He's in construction. I'm a COO. I'm a fractional drop-in CEO.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. I am wondering, even though I think he's tough to work with, maybe there's something to that. We got my strength. I'm the CEO. I've got that vision.
Hmm.
And he's like, Deb, how are we going to do that?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
never
it's
know.
usually what it is. It's usually because most of the clients that I've worked with are women, most of the team that I've worked with are women, and my experience, they're the ones that are the ones that have created the business, have taken the risk, and their partner is often the ones that's a little bit more analytical, a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah, yeah,
logical,
yeah.
a little bit more realistic, and a little bit
Yeah.
more pragmatic. And so not always, there can be a perfect blend and a combination to that. But again, it's got to be the right fit. And if I can also share something, because I heard you say it, and I love saying this because it was something that we went through and had to figure out in the beginning. I did not work for my wife, and she did not work for me. We removed the
Ooh.
word "for" from the vocabulary, because when I stepped in, I didn't do anything in the business. I wasn't able to make a sale. I wasn't able to market. I wasn't able to do what I was doing was clearing the space for her to do more of the things that were growing the business. And so we were very clear, like we paid ourselves the exact same amount. We always talk to each other and refer to each other as equals, as opposed to, so my husband who works for me, and especially as a
Oh.
man, that can feel emasculating if I'm being honest,
And depends
right?
on the circle that you're in, how it's perceived.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and we've shared that because we've worked with couples that are in businesses together. And again, most of them, in some cases, the woman is the entrepreneur and the man, the spouse is the one that, is strong in finance and really good at making plans and
Mhm.
executing everything else. And so we made that distinction in the beginning just to be careful, again, just to kind of
Love
not
it.
blur the lines.
Absolutely love that. And again, I love that. We probably talk offline that CEO, COO. In the beginning, any founder is wearing both hats. They need to grow the business, set the vision, set the strategy, and they're also the operator delivering the goods and services. And I am probably at that inflection point where, okay, the business is starting to come in. I see where we're going. And now I got all this back office operation stuff like I
Yeah.
can do it. I can do it, but it's starting to bring me down. So
Yeah.
I'm already looking at my org chart up here and seeing who could I bring on to start so I can be more out there. But let's come back to you because your area of focus right now is working with entrepreneurs to help them scale without burnout. So again, I'm probably starting to enter that chapter of my life, but tell me a little bit about when you are brought in to work with somebody. Talk to me about how do we keep those entrepreneurs from burning out and doing that purposeful work?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I mean, usually it's an awareness that the entrepreneur has that they've gotten to that point where I call it the ceiling of complexity. You've heard, I'm
Mm,
sure, Deb, the expression, "What got you here is not going to get you there," and they know that they could get there in the same way that they've been doing things in the past, perhaps kind of being the jack of all trades. In the beginning, they did everything, and when you get to a certain point successful in your business, multiple six, multiple seven figures, it's actually not more about doing. It's actually more about thinking and really honoring the space that you need to be as the visionary. The challenge, in my experience, has been when they have that awareness, because they could do so many things,
yeah.
but there's actually only certain things that they should be doing. And it's a real test of willpower and awareness to be able to kind of let the control go and be able to rely on somebody that can come in and I say, we run your business with you, or in some cases for you. And that doesn't mean we take control. It means we give you the control back, because what happens is that I always use this analogy. I'll do a visual, right? So let's say over here in my upper left, your upper right, maybe corner is the visionary. And I say up here, right? Because they're focused up and they're focused out. Future, vision, ideas, big picture. Over here is your day to day, right? Making sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. We're running like a well-oiled machine, people in the right seat, systems in place. We're scaling the machine, right? But sometimes to get from here all the way down to here there's what I call the missing link, because people as entrepreneurs, their goal and where their sweet spot is what I say they make it up. They make up the idea, they make up the vision, they make up the goal. And then the people down here, your team, are like, just tell me what to do. Like they're the
Yes.
worker bees.
Yeah.
They're like, just, tell me what to do and when to do it by. But to go from make it up all the way down to make it occur, there's this step in the middle, which is what I say we make it real. We COOs are the ones that make it happen. We're the ones that can bridge the strategy all the way down to the tactical day to day. So the visionary doesn't have to, but what happens is they get the confidence and the faith that that is working so efficiently and so effectively that they become more confident in executing on the bigger vision. And so there's like the snowball effect that takes place, because they can see I'm getting traction, I'm getting momentum, we're getting results, we're getting sales, we're getting profit, we're getting alignment with team, go, go, go. And at the same time, I'm feeling so energized because I can go out and find bigger, more opportunities, exponential ways to grow the business. And they've got that connection in the middle that kind of bridges the two. That's usually, and so when the entrepreneur at that point realizes that it can't be just on their own in the same way that they've been doing things, and we are able to step in and partner with them to make that happen, they feel free, they feel excited, and then usually the results start to come in line with the team and the business. So
You spawned another. I'm writing a whole bunch of notes down here, and I see myself getting to that point. I mean, right now my operations is fractured. I've got some social media marketing, scheduling of my podcast, putting together proposals, looking at accounts payable. That's all operations, and I've
Yeah,
parsed that out to a few smaller support people, and I'm doing a lot of it. But at some point, I
yeah,
see like all those bits and pieces. At some point, it's like, oh my god, I got to do this, and that's how my
yeah.
Saturday morning goes. Now, you just spawned an idea. There's nothing that can replace the human who can look at the situation, bond mentally with that CEO, and say, I got this. But there's also the EOS, an entrepreneurial operating system, which I see a lot of CEOs
Mm,
pull in those experts. I just wonder if you could share with me to compare and contrast that platform, its impact, its purpose, and or somebody like you. Talk
yeah.
to me about that.
In terms of EOS.
Yeah. I'm just curious because,
Yeah,
like, somebody, a CEO will say, "Okay, I got my leadership team, and I want an entrepreneurial operating system because that's going to take care of things." And then I'm saying to myself, "Yeah, but you really need somebody that, like, a COO that's
yeah,
just going to say, I'm just going to do whatever, and I know what needs to be put in place, but I'm going to customize it based on your specific needs, not cookie
right.
cutter, because you may not need." That's what I'm thinking. I want your perspective on that because
Yeah, yeah,
I may have clients, I come in for a certain thing, but I might say, do you need an EOS system? And
right.
or do you need a Derek?
Right. Or a combination of both. And this is,
Whatever. Yeah.
the way, because of the way that I say we, people like me, COOs, the way that we're wired is that we think in a systematic, process structured framework. When I've done this with Boldheart, my wife's business coaching company, and the other clients that we've worked with and scaled at multiple seven figures, it's not like we just come in and say, okay, what are we doing? Like, no. There's a process. There's a methodology. There is a framework that we use because that's how we look at businesses. And I know businesses are different industries, different size, different complexities, different markets, everything else. But at the end of the day, the way that we look at it, marketing is marketing, sales is sales, operations is operations, no matter what you deliver or provide or give or whatever. It's basically what you just sold based on what you just marketed, you're now giving to your clients, your customers, and anything else. And finance is the output of doing marketing and sales and operations really, really well. And then it always, in my opinion, feeds back into the marketing. And so when we look at that holistically, we're taking into consideration what are the systems that we're putting in place? What are the structures that we're putting in place? What are the processes that we're putting in place? Not just in the nitty gritty day to day, but I mean like a system for how we make sure we've got the right people in the right seats. We have a framework in place on how we are leveraging your marketing to increase lead generation, visibility, amplification, right? We're looking at things in a systematic way, and leveraging what I call the toolbox of EOS, which is how do we communicate as a team? How do we collaborate? How does a visionary work with a second in command, a COO or an integrator, to make sure they're aligned, they're on the same page, they know where they're going? How are we looking at metrics and
Yeah.
dashboards and story of the numbers to make sure we're actually
Just
on track
brings
with
it all
what we're doing?
together. It just
It brings
ties
it
it
all
all together.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the backbone. That's why I love it, because it's the backbone of how you run an entrepreneurial company, and it allows the visionary. Again, it's meant to serve the back end of the business, but what it does is it gives the freedom and the confidence to the entrepreneur because it's taken care of. And I don't know why whenever I have this conversation, I'm not sure if it's a visual, but I go like this because like it's the back end of the business, and I always kind of say it's almost like cradling a baby, like making sure it's taken care of, it's got the right things in place. And it's really, really important. So having that system in place gives us an additional framework to leverage and pull in the concepts, the ideal ideas, the strategies, the templates in order to kind of, continue to provide that framework and that structure of accountability, right? Making sure that people are aligned, they're in the right seats, there's a culture of ownership, culture
Mm.
of responsibility. It's super, super important to have that.
So, one of the things for those of you who are just listening, I might throw you over to the YouTube channel. Eric is very animated and I'm very animated. So, you will get the three-dimensional effect of us trying to explain our views
Yeah.
here. So, I encourage you also to check out the YouTube channel. So, again, you're giving me a lot of ideas, and I know a sweet spot is working with entrepreneurs to start providing them the support they need so they can do what they need to do. But I can't help but think that this also just applies to small and medium sized companies because they also get to particular inflection points. Maybe they have an operation operations manager. But when you get to those levels of I need just somebody that has,
Yeah.
strategy minded versus I just get orders out. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to make that as a statement, but come back into then because I think this question I want to ask you will start providing some actionable tips. So when you think of when you go in and start working with these entrepreneurs who are trying to scale their business, what are some of the common mistakes they can or do make and how to avoid them?
Great question. Um, I would say one of the first mistakes that they may not even be aware that is being made is that they are not clear that that's the kind of support that they may need.
Okay.
And similar to what I was saying earlier is that, in the beginning they did everything, they could do it all, but at a certain point they're not meant to be doing it all. And I think just having that awareness to say, if I want to get, say, I'm at 500,000 or I'm at, 750,000 or I'm at, I just broke 1 million last year and I want to get to two, I want a 2x or 3x, knowing that not only do they need the business to change in terms of the structure, the operations, the team, and everything else. But most importantly, they need to change. And so there is a huge mindset component to what we do that allows the entrepreneur to really see not only the bigger picture and the bigger future of their business and what they want it to be, but their role in making that happen and realizing that for them to get there, like I said earlier, it's really more about I say less doing and more thinking
Yeah.
and doing less better. That doesn't mean they're lazy. That doesn't mean like, great, I can now disappear and take a vacation. You should. We all should, as the entrepreneur, the business owner, take an unplugged vacation. That's where you recharge and get your ideas. But it's a different version of a future self that needs to be present now in order for their mindset to be in place for where they're going. Because when we work with a company, we don't scratch the surface. We go in and there's a bit of like we're in it. It's the, open up the hood and what's working, what's not working, what can we do more of that's working and do less of or improve of what's not
Yeah.
working. And sometimes those are pretty significant shifts that need to happen. And so the entrepreneur, the mindset of the entrepreneur really needs to be aligned to know that, there's going to be a change in the business itself, which they want because of the results, but also a change in them. And so in that awareness is massive because then they see that they need to get the level of support, but they also see that there's a different version of them that needs to be accustomed to that. I think the other thing that I've noticed in doing this is that one of the mistakes is that, the work that we do and not we, but in this arrangement of having that trusted second in command is trust. Because when you have somebody in your organization at that level that is running the business with you, there has to be a huge level of trust. Because otherwise, how are you going to rely on them to cultivate the team, to make the projects real, to execute the plans, to look at everything as that air traffic controller? So when you are on an unplugged vacation and you know that the business is not just running, but it's running exceptionally well, things are happening without your involvement more efficiently, more effectively. That is a huge component of being able to trust that person to essentially allow that mechanism to be in place, if you see what I mean. So the,
I,
the trust is it's and that's not something that's just like given. It's not just we step in and be like, okay, can now give us the trust. We're here. We're
no.
going, no, no, no. It's like, we step in and through the relationship, through the conversations, through the development of the strategy and our plan and our process, they can start to see what that really looks like. But we have to lovingly sometimes hold them accountable in that reliability of individuals like us. We are that stable rock that you can
Yeah.
count on, rely on in the business. Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate so much about your brand and how you operate as well as mine, because so often there's like a pain point where I drop in
Mm.
and help solve that. But in that process and lowering the temperature, calming things down a little bit, solving a business issue, you have to establish trust. And then once we can kind of breathe easy and say,
Yeah.
okay, now how do we prevent this from happening again? What are the systems and processes we need to
Yeah.
put in place? Then we have trust because we've been in the deep end together and now we can move solidly forward. But I want to ask you if you could share an example of a C-suite leader, a CEO, where they had to go through this journey of shifting their perspective and who they needed to be, and what was then the impact to their business or any aha moments. Because even though I know focus is with entrepreneurship, I see value in the work you also do with like a small and medium sized company that might even be like second generation or been
Yeah.
around for 15, 20 years and pretty stable. So
Yeah.
talk to me about a transformation for a leader.
Yeah, so we worked with one client in particular. I won't mention names or
Of
industries or
course.
anything else, but I'll use it as an example because it was pretty transformational. And it was a fairly large company. They were at multiple seven figures. They're in the government, I wouldn't say government, but like grant writing industry for government agencies. And, sizable team, sizable structure, had been stagnant. There was exponential room for potential growth because of the ability to step into a market where they were local and there was room for national expansion. But in order to get to that vision, there were a lot of things that needed to be addressed. There were inefficiencies in how we do things around here in terms of team, in terms of process, in terms of structure, et cetera. But the visionary was clear. This is where we can go. I can see that this is 10x in the next 5 years, but we got to take care of the baby. We got to get that up to speed to make sure it's all up and running and operational. And so one of the things that we do is when we step in, again, establish trust. This is not a quick fix. This is not something like, great, here's your 10x plan on a silver platter, and then we're going to go make it happen, in a matter of months or whatever. It takes some time to build that infrastructure and build that foundation. In that case, there was a little bit, inevitably in some cases, an interesting dynamic shift in the team where in some companies, when we've observed this, some individuals and teams aren't on board with a culture of accountability and ownership. They like to kind of fly under the radar and kind of check in and check out and get their stuff done. Like, no, 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 no. This is transparency. This is like all what is the expression? All boats on a rising tide or something, rising tide
Goes
lifts all
together.
boats. Like
Yeah.
everybody's got to step up in that way because the visionary was clear. And then the thing that I think the reason why I'm sharing this is that when we kind of got into the nitty gritty, right, and started to looking at the things that were working, not working with the teams, the process, how things were organized, et cetera, because the visionary, they weren't looking at that. And the team is just kind of going about their thing and not really looking at from a perspective of what's working, what's not working. We uncovered a couple 100,000, like multiple six figures of unclaimed past due payments on contracts. And it was like right there. And it was not about blame. It was not about like you didn't do this wrong. We didn't want to, but like that was there. And in the exercise of kind of flushing out, like I always say, like smoke to the top. What are the issues in the business? Not the problems, the issues. We can fix problems, but problems are usually a symptom of like the underlying issue that's going on. And
Yeah.
the underlying issue was we don't have metrics, we don't have ownership and finance, we don't have a system in place for proper invoicing and collections and reconciliation. So fixing the problem is like, great, get the money. Yeah, we did that. But the underlying issue is like, how do we not make sure that that happens again and doing it in a systematic way? And that was a game changer. And that was just one aspect. And again, from that, looking at other things that we could be doing across the business. And I'll share one more thing about this because what I liked about this as an example, I often say, systems and processes aren't sexy. Entrepreneurs don't usually jump up and down and say, like, I want more systems and processes and structure. They're like, no, 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 no. I don't want structured processes and systems because it feels like it confines them. It feels
Yes.
like it boxes them in. Here's what I'll say. You cannot scale complexity. So if your business feels complex, you can't scale that. You can scale simplicity, and simplicity comes from a process-driven, not a person-driven company. And that doesn't mean we don't care about people,
Yeah.
but when you have processes in place and the people could do really, really good work based on those processes, like in that example we did just in the finance piece, it allows a lot of traction and momentum and people get on board. I mean, the team members get more on board. They get more fired up because they feel empowered and supported. So one example, and there's many others, but I like that one the most because it was one of those that like you didn't even know it was like right under their nose that was right there. And being able to have that as a result was was worthwhile to say the least.
So, quick question, because again, my brain is just all over the place. That's the entrepreneur in me. Beautiful work, and now I clearly understand what you can do, regardless of the entrepreneurship or mid-sized company.
Mm,
But you said that you had like the COO hat when you worked with your wife, and you're the CEO of the COO Solution. Are you still working with your wife, or you just removed that hat?
great question. Great question. So, uh, I'll say this. So we made a conscious decision about a year and a half ago that in order for me to really fulfill in my passion and fulfillment in this type of work that I'm doing, which is very similar to the work that I was doing in her company, but at scale,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and being able to create that through the COO solution, I needed to get out of the day to day. And that was, a conscious decision that we made. It was the right decision for me. It was actually the right decision for her. I mean, 17 years, it was scaled. It was incredible. At the same time, we knew that we had different journeys as far as the next evolution. So, to pull a page from our playbook, we brought in a fractional COO to replace me in the day to day so
Okay.
that I could focus on the COO solution. To be clear, I'm still involved. Am I running the day to day? Am I into the day to day?
You're on the
No, but it's
advisory board.
yeah, exactly. Something like that. Here's what's so interesting. So one of the things that we have, for every company that we use is we usually develop what I call an accountability chart, not an organizational chart, an accountability chart. So we know who's accountable for what.
Mm,
And it was the first time
got
in
it.
18 years that my name wasn't on the accountability chart. And it was a little bittersweet moment, but it was all for the good reason. Yeah, so we're still, we still strategize together. We still come up with ideas together, but that's her thing now, and I've got mine. So,
Wow, it's a beautiful thing. Well, I really understand what you do. I appreciate your energy
oh,
and the
thank
level
you.
that you operate. It's been truly an enjoyable conversation. And for me, if nothing else, as I scale or as my clients scale and may
Yeah,
need a fractional COO, and there's no shame in it because leaders need to focus on their core competency. You may not need a full time resource. So sometimes they hold off until they break or they're in
yeah,
crisis. Start thinking about flexing your workforce by leveraging the skills of a fractional COO. They may give you what you need when you need it at the right level. And at some point, you may bring on then a permanent people, but at least you have peace of
mm,
mind because you brought somebody like Derek in. So,
yeah,
what I'd love to do is pass the mic over to you one last time for any last thoughts for my audience and maybe how people can get a hold of you because I've really enjoyed this. You're in my
yeah.
network now. You're one of my fractional COO go to. So, last words
Oh,
from
thank
you.
you. Yeah, I mean, final word is just I love having conversations. Like I am a bit passionate about it, and it's interesting because I'm not as that kind of second in command backstage kind of person. You would expect somebody to be a little more reserved, a little more quiet, a little bit more kind of shy in that way. But when it comes to this, I'm very passionate because I love it. I firmly believe that for those business owners that are looking to scale and seeing this as the right solution to get them to where they want to be. I kind of feel like I take a stand for that because that I've just seen has been the catalyst in so many different ways. So thank you. And having said that, I think for your audience, they might be thinking, well, do I need to think about getting a fractional COO? What does that look like, et cetera, et cetera? And we offer on our website, the COOsolution.com, there's a quiz that somebody could take to see like what kind of support would you be looking for to grow your business? And I say without burning out, right? And we look at, and this is not like a skim the surface quiz. This is like a pretty significant assessment, not to intimidate people, but it asks the questions like in marketing, in operations, in sales, in finance, in technology. We want you to really understand like what's working in my business and what's not working. And from there, do I need to consider to get some sort of support, whether it's a COO or maybe in some cases, depending upon the size of the company, it might be I need to get marketing help. I have to say, get some help because you can't do it alone. You know this, we know this, your audience knows this, but the mantra of you can't do it alone never goes away. New level, new devil. At a certain point, you need more support, more ownership, more leadership as you continue to grow and scale. So I offer that as a resource in the quiz, in the form of a quiz, if it can help anybody who's listening to see, what that means for them. So
So for me, Derek, this has been a great opportunity just to get to know you. And in the process, my listeners get a treat by just listening to your energy and gaining your insights. And so I just want to say thank you so much for dropping in. You've been an amazing guest and wish you continued success.
thank you so much, Deb. Deb, it's been a pleasure to be here.